And welcome back. This is another episode of the Brutally Honest Loan Officers podcast. I am Derek Brown. With me, as always, Stephen Brock. Say hi, Stephen.
What's going on? We are back.
We are back. Yeah, and unfortunately, we took a week off.
I don't know if we
We were
took it
not,
off. We just didn't do a
well,
podcast.
we didn't do, we have been diligent about doing a podcast on a weekly basis. And last week we were not able to, because you may not know this, but Stephen and I both live in Florida and we've had a couple hurricanes come through. So last week was a little bit scarier than Helene for us, just because it was more on a path to hit Stephen and then come after me. Stephen, you live in Wellington, like that's Palm Beach Gardens area, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then
We
I live
were.
in,
I don't think we were the hurricane. We were never really worried. Yeah, because it was going to hit the west coast. We're on the east coast, but then they kept moving north. So we thought we might get a part of it coming down, and they kept going a little
right.
bit further north.
Yeah, I guess technically it hit me first, then you. Uh, it was, I hate the news. I love the news and I hate the news. The news like was preparing us for it, but also I feel like it scares you. But then when you see the devastation, like, okay, rightly so.
Yeah.
In my area, like an alert came up talking about evacuations, and we're like, wait, what? What? Like, so we go to turn on the news, like, what did we miss in the last few hours? And then they sent another alert saying that it was just for mobile homes, low-lying areas, and disabled people. So we're like, okay, I guess that doesn't necessarily apply to us, but it still like puts a little bit of fear in you.
Hmm.
Luckily, like I'll say our thoughts and prayers are out there for everybody that's been affected by Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. I was very fortunate to not have to deal with any damage. We had a very messy yard, bunch of branches on the roof throughout the yard, stuff like that, but no real damage. We had a lot of wind, some rain, but nothing too crazy. Steven, how did you end up?
We had two small trees that fell down, but they didn't hit anything. So we had to basically dig those out and get them out, but very small. But the neighborhood next to us, we had a tornado come through, an F3, and devastate homes. But people realize like, oh, these houses are built for hurricanes. Yeah, well, a hurricane is like what 100 and something miles an hour.
Gusts
F3,
or whatever, yeah.
yeah, guys. I think an F3 is F3 tornado wind speed. Let me see what that is. Up to 206 miles an hour. What do you think a Cat 5 hurricane is that?
But it's also just like a tornado. It's over and over and over and over and over. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's one little spot when they hit. And you don't even like a hurricane, you see it come through. And yeah, with hurricanes, you get the tornadoes. And yeah, this one hit and it devastated homes. They were about to build or they were building a new Publix that was opening up in 3 weeks. They got to tear it completely down, redo it. I mean, it was a new built community on some of it that hit too. That the dumpster that they put all the trash in, like the big long ones, was I think
right.
people have seen on social media, like it was on the roof, the cars
Jeez.
all damaged and all that. And what people also don't realize is a hurricane, you button up, you close everything in. And a tornado will break your hurricane windows, shatter them because it's the pressure of the wind that actually
Right.
shatters it. So you're actually supposed to, in a tornado, is supposed to open your window so the pressure can go through. And so some people are like, oh, it shattered my windows. It's like, yeah, the pressure shattered it. So
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Like you said, thoughts and prayers to everybody out there. I mean, we'll recover from it. It is South Florida. We're kind of, or for us, we're used to the hurricanes and stuff like that. But yeah, this one did.
Right.
We weren't in the path. We weren't in the cone at all for the last like 3 days, and we had some major damage from it. So I think that kind of shook people because a lot of people are like, "Oh, we're out of the cone." They were putting up shutters and stuff. They stopped, and
Right.
maybe that tornado you should have, but most of the county was still good.
Well,
So let's go over. What do you do? What do you do? A hurricane's supposed to come. You're in South Florida or anywhere in Florida. Apparently, you can hit everywhere.
anyway,
What do you do?
Florida, now Georgia, Tennessee, south in North Carolina. I think they got so much rain that no matter how you're prepped, I mean, the flash floods that they suffered were awful. But we're gonna take a few minutes to explain what to do, how to prep, what are some important things you should be doing prior to the storm, and then how that affects mortgage loans, stuff like that. So prior to the storm, one of the most important things you can do, if you're not gonna buy extra water and toilet paper and food and stuff like that, if you're just gonna ride it out, one of the most important things you can do is record a video of everything outside and inside your house. So that if you have to make an insurance claim, you can prove how your house was before the storm versus after.
Especially if you have shutters. Like, you have shutters, record it that they're up. Because you don't want the insurance company to be like, well, you didn't put shutters up, so that's why you got the damage.
Right. So and this actually goes for, like, if you're renting a home too, not just if you own it.
Yeah.
If you're renting, do the same thing. It's recommended that you have renter's insurance that can help cover some of your losses if you lose some items or have damage. But it's also going to help your landlord, be able to make their claim that could also help reimburse you for anything lost. So taking pictures of every single room, every just inch of your house. Try to take a video or pictures along the inside and the outside. In your garage, if you've got tools and vehicles and stuff like that, record everything. And then as far as hurricane prep, what do you do, to secure your home?
You gotta, everything from your yard has to be put in.
Yep.
That's, I think you said you have hurricane windows, I have hurricane windows, so we're not worried about putting shutters and stuff like that. But you got people that have to, at least one, I would say, get the shutters up, or accordion shutters where you close them, whatever you can to secure. Some people put plywood up on the windows and stuff like that, like protect yourself. Anything that you have outside needs to come in. We had our whole garage packed with all our outdoor furniture and all that stuff.
Dude, our patio. That was so annoying. I'm telling you right now, taking because we had to take it from our patio all the way around the house to our garage. And then our garage has just been packed with furniture, the tables, pool toys, all that stuff. Anything I just didn't want flying around my patio and breaking my screen.
Yeah. You put all that in. And what you gotta be careful is it's not always what you prepare to. You want to make sure your neighbors are doing it too, because if their stuff flies out, it's hitting your house.
Yeah, I've got a neighbor that's building their house, and there's just piles of trusses and blocks and all kinds of stuff. We were terrified that their stuff's just going to come flying over to our house, but luckily it didn't.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's one of the main things is get everything, get the house prepped. So getting everything in, everything put away, secured, getting the windows all covered. That's the biggest one, for the house at least.
And then you get your supply kit ready. So you got to have enough food, water, medicine. Don't forget medicine. And they recommend you have supplies that can last you 2 weeks. I think that just throughout our city and our county and all the volunteers and everybody that's been so helpful, you could probably get away with less than 2 weeks, but that's the recommended amount of food, water, and medicine. They say for 2 weeks. Where we were prepared, and then it's also just an excuse to have hurricane snacks. Did you have hurricane snacks? Tell me you did.
We had so much food saved up. One is we're on gas, so our power did go out for like 4 or 5 hours.
But you can still cook.
But we still cooked. Like, I just lit up the stove and still cooked everything, and it's still daylight. I mean, by the time we ate, we had to put candle lights up because it was too dark to really see what you were doing. And of course, we tried to clean up the kitchen by candlelight, which, if you ever get a chance, not recommend it, because I was like, oh, it looks pretty clean. And then as soon as we finished cleaning up, like, the lights came back on, and I was like, we were not even close to cleaning. Like, I got to mop the floor because everything went on the floor. You couldn't see. Yeah. But yeah, you definitely got the hurricane snacks. My dad came over. He was in Naples. My dad's stepmom came over because they're close to the coast, so they were actually technically evacuated. They came over before they were evacuated and stayed with us. So we're like entertaining and making food and everything else, and they ate so much food. Because then you're like,
we We
The
were
power
trying
went out. I
prior
was
to
like,
the hurricane, all the leftover food that we had or any like, chicken and stuff like that, we tried cooking so that we could then eat it and eat the leftovers. And then, we just left like our bread and peanut butter and stuff like that,
yeah.
left that for the hurricane snacks. And then we bought some extra chips. Packet of Halloween Oreos is almost gone. And it's been less than a week. Yeah, I had a problem. I did.
Oh, geez.
So
Yep. So you gotta get everything ready. And then people realize that if you lose power, so a lot of people will do is they'll freeze a cup of water and put a penny on top.
yeah,
And what happens is if you lose power, you don't want to open your fridge, you don't want to open your freezer because it's letting all that cold air out and nothing can remake it. So you keep it all closed. But you lose power long enough that water will melt and the penny will drop into that
right,
water, and that tells you like, hey, anything that's in here basically needs to be thrown out because
correct.
it's perishable, gotta go. So we were lucky not to have that part of it, but there's probably definitely people around the state that definitely had it, had to throw stuff out with it. Next one, preparing for the flooding. I want to say first is like North Carolina, like we said, Tennessee, North Carolina, all of them got hit with the, which one was that?
Helene with flash
Helene.
floods.
Yeah, when that happened, every house that I have lived in that I have owned, I've always had flood insurance. Now, if you're not required to have it, because you're not in a flood zone, it's only like $500-600 a year.
Sometimes less, depending on where
So
you're
yeah,
at in the zone. Yep.
so like that, those people up there that didn't have the insurance flood, because your regular homeowners insurance will not cover that. It
Right.
covers like a roof leak or a pipe
Your
burst.
water coverage
Yeah,
is not flood insurance.
exactly.
So that's your water damage, your water coverage in your HO3 policy is if a pipe bursts inside your home, like water
Yep,
is coming from the inside and then damages something. So if
exactly.
you have a sink that blows up and then it ruins your kitchen, yes, that's water damage. You can make a claim, get a new kitchen.
Yep.
But if water is flooding from the outside in, that is not water damage coverage.
So yeah, you definitely. I always have flood insurance. It's sad for those people up there that didn't have any insurance at all. Like, hey, you're not rebuilding on that stuff. So you got to go through FEMA and all that, and who knows how long the government. You're waiting on the government to do something like that.
Right.
No matter who's in charge of the government, that's going to take forever, and you're relying on them. So, yeah, flooding. Make sure your gutters are clean, drains are cleaned out. When you're preparing your home, making sure that's all cleaned out. And we didn't put it on here, I don't think, is that don't be doing yard work and cleaning up trees right before a hurricane. Like that's the biggest thing is people will trim their trees and like, oh, I gotta trim my trees so the hurricane don't blow it over, and they put it by the side of the road, and then
Now you have projectiles that are
yeah,
going to be coming for you.
the
Yeah.
county stops doing all the trash and bulk pickup, so that's just sitting there. Like,
Right.
yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and another thing is like look to see where your AC unit is, your heater, pool pump, stuff like that. That's stuff that can get taken out by a flood. So you might want to put sandbags around it if you can elevate, an AC unit, great. But it all just depends. So electrical panel is usually high enough, but sandbags are important. Next is then your roof. It's hard to protect your roof beforehand. But just, make notice of like your gutters, like you said, make sure that those are clean. Otherwise, just be prepared to tarp it, look for missing shingles. And then, but I don't want to say call a roofer and see if you have hurricane damage. If you think you do, because most roofers are going to say you do, you should get replaced. Find a trustworthy roofer that's willing to come out. If you want to do a post-storm inspection, just to see how you fared, but just be cautious on that. If somebody's coming knocking on your door, I would call and ask around, ask your realtor, ask your loan officer, like, do you have a trusted roofer that can come out and do an inspection, not somebody that just came from Texas, that's knocking on doors and stuff like that, trying to replace every roof in the neighborhood. Find somebody that you trust.
Yep. We already kind of talked about the power outages that you can have. So, make sure your propane tanks are off, take off small appliances and all that stuff, turn that off. But if power is out in a wide area, you got to go to the grocery store. So make sure you have cash because they might only take cash then too. So having cash on
Right.
hand, you know, having all that because your credit cards and all that stuff might not work. So having all that and then preparing for emergencies, have all the stuff that you need. Um, I always tell people to make sure you have all your paperwork in a location that
Yeah, you know
you
what
can
I
get
was
to.
told? My mother-in-law was just like, hey, so if you have important paperwork that you don't have like saved on a PDF somewhere, which I pretty much have everything in a cloud now.
Yeah.
But she was just like, put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in your dishwasher. And I was like, and I started thinking about it, I was like, I guess that's smart. Like, kind of waterproof,
Yeah.
We're not going to be running it if we lose power. And if we've got flooding coming in, like, I don't want it to like wash away. So put it in the dishwasher. Okay.
Wonder how watertight those. I mean, how much water do they fill up with? I wonder. That is a good idea.
Yeah.
And at least it's in a Ziploc bag too, like so you got a little extra protection if it does fall in there. But yeah,
Yeah. We've seen a lot of times where it's actually after a hurricane. We saw this after Hurricane Ian, where water levels just kept rising, even though the hurricane was gone. Water levels kept coming up, and then it was a mad dash for sandbags. And who's got sand, who's got the bags, trying to fill them up, block up your house. So it's kind of important to have that ahead of time if you can. Um, Plywood, large tarps or plastic sheeting. Those are other things you can have ahead of time so that after the storm, you can then, cover your roof if needed, or, if you've got water rising near a door or window, something like that, you can try and block it off and save it. But that's about it as far as everything that Steve and I talked about, what we think is important for hurricane prep.
yeah. And then carbon dioxide, fire, smoke alarms. Make sure the batteries are working. That so if you lose some of them, more like ours is ran on the alarm's power, to the house's power. So I didn't realize one was technically dead because it doesn't beep because there's still technically power to it until we lost power for like that 4 hours and like an hour in it killed the battery in there, so I had to replace it because it was just beep beep beep.
There's
I was like,
nothing
oh.
worse than a fire alarm battery
Yeah.
or smoke detector battery.
So make sure those are all good to go on there because you don't the AC is not running. Florida is built very, very tight homes. So you don't want a bunch of, if you're not opening windows and doors and all that stuff, so there's no airflow coming in. So you got the carbon dioxide that could build up really, really quickly on that,
Right.
especially if you're all in one room or something like that. So, but what do we do? What if we're buying a home or if we're selling a home? What happens then?
Yeah.
Like what's
So for buyers and sellers, in case you're unaware, especially in our area right now, almost every single county has been declared a disaster county. Which if you're a buyer and you're obtaining financing through a mortgage, your mortgage lender is most likely going to require a post-storm inspection. They just want to ensure that no major damage was done to the home. If insurance was not bound prior to the hurricane, you were not able to bind during the hurricane, and you've got to wait for that company to open back up and then start binding policies after the hurricane is through. So that could pose a delay if you didn't bind it prior to the storm, but both of those situations can lead to a delayed closing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have a delayed closing, but it's a hurricane. We can't help it. And honestly, in your contract that you have, there is a clause called force majeure. And that's a clause that allows for delays or even termination without penalties due to an act of God. So we consider hurricanes an act of God. So if for whatever reason, and there's several different ways that this could happen. Let's say you're selling a home and using those proceeds to qualify and purchase your next home. Maybe your next home, the new home you're buying, wasn't affected, but your current home was that you're under contract selling, and then if you have to then file an insurance claim and you realize it's going to be 3 to 6 months before everything is fixed, that might cancel. And then your future home that you were going to purchase needs to be canceled. So what happens? Can you get your escrow deposit back? Can you do all this or that? force majeure allows you to cancel without any penalties.
Yeah.
So
that thing's huge, and what people don't realize is they're like, oh, well, the easiest way is we can get pictures and we sign a lender's certificate and make sure everything is good and it looks good. But sometimes they have to be, the appraiser has to go back out there, make sure there wasn't any damage that's going to affect the value of the home. That's going to change it. And one of the big ones on there is if you have a pool and the fence is down, you're not closing. The appraiser can't sign off on it because now it's a safety issue that there's not a fence around that pool. So they got to wait for that fence to get rebuilt, which is probably everybody's last thought of rebuilding. Like they want to worry about the house itself, but it's like, hey, that fence is not up. Therefore, it is a safety issue on that pool. So
what if you have like the little pool fence, like kid prevention?
I think it depends on the permit of the pool.
Gotcha.
Because like my neighbor, they technically do not have a fence around their pool. They have a screen around their pool. So the screen is technically the barrier. I have another neighbor where he had his yard was already fenced in, but when they pulled the permit, he has got a screen too. They made a screen the barrier. So gotcha. He had to wait for something one time being built that he couldn't technically, because like your pool's done. And he's like, yeah, but I'm waiting for my outdoor kitchen to come in. I can't put it in. And like the screen was built, but it wasn't screened in. He's like, I can't put it in until I gotta wait. I can't finish my screen until they put it in.
That's stupid.
I was like, so why can't you use your pool? Because you have a fence. And he was like, yeah, because the screen is technically the barrier on the permit. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And he's like, yeah, I didn't think about that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So if you have questions about that, if you're in a situation where force majeure, might be happening, if you have questions, you can reach out to us. You should be reaching out to your realtor. If you don't have a realtor, shame on you.
Yeah.
This is one of the benefits of having a realtor. But yeah, once again, thoughts and prayers out to everybody that's been impacted by Helene and Milton. But this has been another episode of the Brutally Honest Loan Officer podcast. Hopefully this is helpful. Save this episode if you're in a hurricane area. But that's it for today.
That's it. Hurricanes suck. That's what
Hurricanes
we're going to do.
suck. See ya.
See you guys.